first met this man, of course, I couldn't quite believe it, because he was one of those iconic movie stars and film stars, stage star, whatever you want to call him, that everybody truly wanted to meet. He was the one with the catchphrase that everybody liked, you know, and it was all sort of, I think it was a little bit up there with like Kenneth Williams from the Carry On films and stuff like that. We're talking about the iconic and wonderful Leslie Phillips. Now, I met him over a number of occasions, and rather strangely, you know, I didn't realise that he lived rather close to me at one period, and I kept seeing him literally doing his shopping. You know what it's like? You kind of think, that can't be Leslie Phillips going out of Tesco's, but it was. This, of course, was a man that had really had a marvellous career, even though he often said to me that he realised most of his career was put together simply because he was playing a cad. And for those that are too young to remember, suave, sophisticated, a bit of a woman chaser, wouldn't be allowed to be cast like that today, you know what I'm saying? But Leslie Phillips was definitely one on his own. Partly, of course, all thanks to his very short stint, nonetheless, in the movies, the Carry On movies. But of course, he was on radio, the Navy Lark, he appeared in so many farces on the West End stage. And as I said, had this sort of character that so many people thought, oh wow, you know, that's Leslie Phillips. Now, as I say, you couldn't necessarily go away with that style. He himself then, in the later life, progressed into things like Harry Potter to great acclaim. A little bit like another chum of mine, Jim Dale, another Carry On actor who became the voice of Harry Potter on all of those audio books. The reason why I mention Leslie is because, and I never understand why this is of interest to anybody other than the immediate family, and I'd love to know what you think to this particular story. You see, Leslie's will's been put in the newspapers. Apparently he left around about 5 million, and then they've detailed exactly how it's going to be distributed to his family, you know, the sort of things, what they get, what he's given them, the Buddha statue, all of this sort of stuff. And I think, well, whose business is of anybody other than the immediate family and Leslie himself? But seemingly, if you're a celebrity, every facet of your life is open to, well, literally, you've got to tell the world everything, haven't you? And the reason why I wanted to share this with you is because, as I say, I've been lucky enough to meet so many of the wonderful people that worked alongside Leslie, like June Whitfield, and of course Joanna Lumley, people like that, that were all fortunate enough to star with him. Married a number of times, lastly, of course, in around about 2013, and you know, that seemingly was a very successful liaison. Leslie, of course, was over 90 when he sadly passed away in 2022. But what's interesting, like all good actors, I remember having a cup of coffee with him one day, a little bit, you know, farther from his home. And we just literally sat out there. Nobody recognised him. And this is the thing about fame and fortune, isn't it? You know, at one point, he would have been one of the most famous, dashing, good-looking men in the world. And people were just walking past him, even though he still had that very much distinctive voice. But like all actors of that era, that period, he said to me, he never really enjoyed playing the lech, the comic roles, the women chasing sort of guys that he was, of course, making money for. But as he said, each time he tried to break away, casting directors said, no, we want this from you. This is the character that we're booking, and this is what you are going to be playing. He was one of the very first men, in fact, to appear showing his posterior on British film in, of course, one of the very early Carry On movies. And apparently he said to me that that got past the censor, but he said some of the more salacious jokes didn't, you know, and he was stunned by the fact that they were able to get away with this rather shocking scene in the late 1950s. Leslie, as I said, the reason why I mention it is I was just lucky enough to meet him, and it is always nice to share memories about people, and more importantly, remember the fact that even though sadly they've now gone on, they do leave an indelible mark on, you know, our lives, because we're going to be watching them for many years to come and wondering, oh, who was he? Oh, he's funny. Everything comes back into fashion. And as he said to me about the cancel culture not too long before he died, he said, look, we've seen all of this sort of thing before. It happened quite early on in the 30s, and then of course, you know, it changed after the war because people were more liberal, so you had sort of comedians like Max Miller pushing the envelope, as the kids say, and then he said suddenly it becomes acceptable. Everything goes a full circle. And he was right. As he pointed out, the bawdy medieval melodramas that they put on even in Shakespeare's time, what were they but absolutely Carry On movies? As he said, don't worry, when you get past 90, your knowledge is incredible. You've seen it all at least once, and you know it's definitely going to come round again. I don't think, though, that the super talented and very debonair Leslie Phillips, I don't think we'll be finding another one of him for some time to come. Do you? Neil Sean in the very heart of Yorkshire.